Welcome to the Business Development Podcast, brought to you by the Global Business Development Association, delivering the strategies and tactics to boost your career and corporate growth.
Hello, BD pros, and welcome to the Global Business Development Association podcast called What is Business Development? Hey, wouldn't you like a book that explains the sales process? I know you're a business developer and you're on the go-to-market team along with marketers and salespeople. And, wouldn't you like to improve your knowledge of sales? And if you're a sales manager or a sales leader, wouldn't you like that too? And a BD leader, wouldn't you like that? I bet you would. And today we have a fantastic book that just came out. It's called How to Sell. It's with our guest, Steve Radford, the author of the book. And it'll help you improve your sales game. And hey, if you want to improve your BD game, well, then go out and grab yourself a copy of the Business Development Body of Knowledge. This is the comprehensive book for our industry, our profession, where you can get your copy of the book, read the Business Development Body of Knowledge, and then you use that to take your online exam for your Business Development Professional certification. And you can do that by going to the GBDA website at gbdassociation.org. Okay, folks, so let's talk about this book that just came out. It's called How to Sell. Everything you need to think, know, and do to have greater sales conversations by Steve Radford. Now, this book is talking about really how selling is changing. And everybody knows that AI now is out there. It's pervasive. Your ability to have conversations with customers and make those enjoyable, insightful, and productive conversations just becomes even more important. And How to Sell focuses on conversational rather than consultative selling, recognizing a customer's foundational values and emotional wants, as well as their more pragmatic needs. It will help you build genuine human connections, deliver more positive buying experiences, and have more effective sales conversations that deliver greater sales results. And the author is Steve Radford. A little bit about Steve. Steve is the founder of the Greater Sales Company, and he trains frontline sales teams to master conversational selling. He teaches them to be more efficient through better sales planning and prioritization. And he mentors and guides them to be more effective at every step, from opening conversations to closing sales. And so I'm excited today to open this conversation with Steve Radford. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tony.
Steve, so how did you get into the business development profession? I say BD, I'm including all of our cousins in sales. So how did you get into the profession?
Okay, so like most people, I kind of sort of fell into my first sales role. I used to be in the pub and hospitality game. Left that. I was off on a year around the world, and a friend of mine picked up the phone and said, "Can you come and help us out?" And I ended up doing a sales role there. She was working for a sales agency at the time, and yeah, we ended up starting our own field sales agency. So we used to manage and develop salespeople on behalf of brands. And it was only when I was running that agency that I kind of got my first, what I would call a true business development role. That was, not only was I helping our teams to sell, what I was doing is, developing the business that we had ourselves and managing our clients too. So yeah, it wasn't planned, but yeah, I loved every minute of it.
Oh, I love that journey. I mean, it really was a journey around the world, right?
Yeah.
And then you came back and you fell into sales and the BD profession, which a lot of people do. And they do that sans a journey around the world. So it's great you were able to discover yourself through the end of that journey. So now, why did you write the book? There are a lot of books on sales. I think it's really intriguing where you say you're shifting the mindset from consultative selling to conversational selling. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how you kind of, created that mindset?
Yeah, sure. So I wrote the book because over my 20-year career, I've developed a lot of sales training and development programs, including some really chunky programs. So I spearheaded the development of the Sales Executive Apprenticeship Program in the UK. So this is a program for school leavers to turn them into great salespeople. And I've developed some university level qualifications too. The thing about those programs is, as gold standard as they are, they're not easy to access, and they're pretty chunky things. The sales apprenticeship is it's a 12 to 18 month program that involves about 600 hours of study. So I challenged myself to, okay, if you only had a short period of time with a salesperson, or if a salesperson wants to get, the maximum value they can over just a few hours, what would you do? And so that's where the book came from. So I challenged myself. I got 50,000 words, or 6 hours if you're listening to the audio book. What is it everybody needs to think, know, and do that are the foundations of all great sales and all great business development careers?
Well, it sounds like a great crash course for anybody that's coming back from a global journey and gets a call from a friend to start a field sales agency. So this is good stuff, Steve. All right, so let's jump into the book. Folks, I'm going to show you the cover a little bit again for folks just listening. The book is How to Sell Everything You Need to Think, Know, and Do to Have Greater Sales Conversations. It's available on Amazon, very accessible. I've been reading it myself. So, Steve, let's talk about the top 3 takeaways or tactics from your book. What's tactic number 1?
Okay, so the book is in 3 parts, everything you need to think, know, and do. So I'm going to give you a tactic from each part. So the first tactic comes from right at the start of part 1. And this is about mindsets, right? Part 1 is all about, how do you think? What are the mindsets? What are those deeply ingrained ways of thinking that if you develop them, they'll shape your behaviors? And the most important one is to focus on helping people. More specifically, focus on helping people to make informed buying decisions by exploring and targeting a win-win outcome. That's what I call my sales philosophy. And it's something I start all of my sales training with, because I think it should underpin everything we do as business development professionals, right from that very first conversation all the way through account development and retention.
Yeah, I like that. I always tell people, look, we're business developers. We're not here to sell anything. We're here to save.
Yeah.
And I always liken it to kind of a lifeguard mindset. Okay. We're not here to run around the beach, just blindly tripping over beach blankets and upsetting people, asking if they need to be saved. No, we need to keep our eyes on the horizon, look for those people that are in distress, and we swim out there and we save them. And at the end of the day, they can take our life ring or not. I'm not the cops. I can't force them, but if they want to be saved, they can come with me. So I like your mindset. I think this is where industry is going for go-to-market teams across the board. When I talk to more and more authors just like you who have been in the trenches, not the theoretical folks that are just teaching academics, but the people who have been in the trenches, they see what works, they know what works, and what has been presented as top tactics or techniques, and they know how those don't work. I think this is great. This is a very healthy perspective that every business developer and salesperson should hear. Go in with the proper mindset. But you say go in with value, deliver value, but what does value mean to you? Because it's very easy to say, oh, well, marketing supposedly created valuable content that I need to show my prospect. But how do you define that?
So it's about net value. So what I mean by that, and this is the principle of social exchange theory, which is subconsciously, every interaction we have, we judge the value we get from it against the costs we have to incur as a result. And the value can be lots of things, right? Okay, so it can be the value we get in terms of, from a business perspective, we could measure it in terms of profit. It might be value that we get helping us towards our own goals and objectives, whether they be professional or otherwise. There are lots of different ways we deliver value. But you've also got to focus on the cost side, because the costs, okay, there's a financial cost if you're making a sale, but there's also a time and effort cost, a cognitive load cost. So it's about not only delivering value, but making the process as easy as possible, as low cost as possible for the customer. So they enjoy those interactions. They want to engage with you as a business development professional. They should be getting value out of every interaction that you have with them.
Yeah. Well, and it's in the business development body of knowledge. There's scientific evidence to show that the prospect experience, we all talk about the customer experience, but before they become a customer, the prospect experience has a greater impact on retention of clients than the customer experience, which is a little mind-boggling, right?
Mhm.
Like they probably went through the prospecting process and the conversion phase with their salesperson and their business developer 3, 4 years ago. And they're contemplating whether they should stay with the company. Those conversations they had 3 or 4 years ago are more important than what happened yesterday in customer experience. And I think that's just absolutely fascinating that it's not just about conversion and getting the deal. It's about getting in there and building that relationship early on so that you have a prospect experience that will really empower that relationship moving forward well beyond the conversion phase, well after the salesperson has closed the deal. This is great stuff, Steve. Let's jump into tactic number 2 because I think this is going to roll right off of tactic number 1. What's number
Yeah.
2?
Tactic. So the book's in 3 parts. Part 2 of the book is everything you think you need to know. So my second tactic comes from part 2 of the book. And this is about making sure you have a good understanding of your role within your organization's sales pipeline. So this is about understanding the entire pipeline, not just your section of it. In the book, I have a really simple visual representation of the pipeline. Understanding if you're not responsible for whole of pipeline, what happens at those intersections? When customers enter your section of the pipeline, where do they come from? Who's responsible for them? And how is that communication managed? And then once you understand your section of the pipeline, to manage it strategically. So this is about taking strategic ownership of what you do. So I work with everything from frontline salespeople into field sales territory execs. So we talk about them taking strategic ownership of what they do and building out their own mini strategy. And I think a good business development strategy has 6 elements to it. So it's who, why, when, where, what, and how. So who are you going to focus on? Who are you prioritizing? Do you really understand what your ideal customers are, your ICPs? The why is, what are your objectives? So what are your objectives for your different types of customer? How do they link to your KPIs? And how do they help the customer with their KPIs too? The when is about your contact frequency. So thinking carefully about, okay, how often and when are we contacting different customers? What's our trigger points? The where is about the communication channels that we use. Are we defaulting to the ones that we like to use, or are we working in the way that customers like to be communicated? The what is about your toolkit. So what tools have you got at your disposal? How can you optimize those? And then the how is about improvement. How can you improve what you do in that area, regardless of the toolkit and the strategy that gets handed to you? How are you taking ownership of that? So as business development professionals, we shouldn't just deal with the strategy we get handed. We should be actively developing our own to sit alongside that.
Yeah, and that's great, Steve. You're covering the 5 W's, right? Or 6 W's, I guess. It's who, what, when, where, why, and how. I guess the 5
Yeah.
W's and an H. And that's great, because that's a simple mindset for new salespeople, new business developers when they're jumping into the role to understand, okay, how do all the pieces of the team fit together, and what's my role, and what are my left and right boundaries? Where do I have authority? Where do I have responsibility? And how can I maneuver effectively on the team? Because every team, every company is different in the way they're structured on their BD teams, their go-to-market teams. So that's a great construct. Let's jump into tactic number 3 then, Steve.
Okay, so part 3 of the book is about everything you need to do. And in there, I have a 7-step process for managing a sales conversation. And the tactic there is to treat every conversation that you have as a sales conversation and plan your objectives accordingly. So as business development professionals, we speak with clients and customers all the time, but we don't always set objectives for those unless we've got a KPI we need to move. And I want to get people away from that. We're always selling something, whether it's an idea or a product or a service. But through every conversation you have, you should set yourself objectives as though it is a sales conversation that you're going to close a deal at the end of. And I have 3 levels of objectives. You need to set yourself an aspirational objective. So this is your stretch objective. If things are going to go really well in this conversation, where can I push this to? So that's not an objective you're going to meet very often, but it's important to have, because sometimes you just catch that customer on the right day at the right time. You need to have a stretch that you can go to. Your level down is something that's achievable. So this is the thing that's going to move your KPIs. That is probably, it's more understanding that this is something that you're going to move. And then the level 3 is your fallback. Okay, if I'm not going to move a KPI today, what can I do that makes it more likely we're going to get some traction on that in our next conversation? So having those objectives means you can flex up and down depending on the nature of the conversation, how it goes with the client. And it means you're always looking at ways that you can get value. And of course, those objectives should be adding value to the client, the customer, as well as to yourself.
Steve, I really like this one. I've never heard this tactic before, and I think this is great because you're setting objectives for each engagement with your prospect, and you're trying to get buy-in, and you're trying to have agreement on those little mini contracts. We write about them in the business development body of knowledge. And this is important for nurturing that relationship, to have those mini contracts. It's a give and take. It's an exchange of value as we progress. And if we're not getting anything in return for our valuable contributions to the conversation, well, then you probably know that it's not going anywhere. And I like how, some people go in with an all or nothing mindset. And what you're saying is, no, it's not all or nothing. Every engagement has different shades associated with it. Yes, you have a stretch goal. And if things align perfectly in this conversation, then you're going to knock it out of the park. But if it doesn't, here's what you should at least achieve. And if that doesn't happen, okay, at a minimum, what should I be able to accomplish? And if you come away with nothing, well, then you're not getting any progress on this. And you should probably just cut bait and move on to the next prospect, probably. Yeah. Would you agree?
No, completely. And it gives you confidence because you've always got somewhere to move to, whether it's because perhaps the customer isn't in the place that you thought they were, and so you need to flex for that reason, or for whatever reason, things don't go as well, or they go better than expected. But it all comes back to the question of, so what are you selling in that conversation? And you'll often talk with business development execs, go, well, I'm not selling anything. We're selling an idea at least, or we're continuing to get them to buy into an idea that, that's what we're moving. The processes that I train people on, you can use to sell them. You can use them to sell ideas as much as you can sell a product or service.
Yeah.
We're salespeople at heart. We're always selling something.
Well, sure. We're trying to deliver value somehow, and I really like this concept of pick something that is a stretch goal for you in each engagement. And I've seen this time and again, where as a business developer, I'm on the go-to-market team with sales folks and account managers, and they're playing it safe, I think. They're going for their KPI goal.
Yep.
And I tell them, look, you're doing a disservice to your prospect if you don't reach, if you don't have a stretch, because I've seen it time again too, where they do stretch, or I have a stretch and I present that to the prospect, and it turns into a whole new conversation. Something the prospect had never thought about, never contemplated, or it completely rewires the entire relationship. Oftentimes it has the prospect saying, oh, I've never heard that before. That's really interesting. And then you have a conversation that leads to way more opportunity than you bargained for.
Yeah. It stops account. If you're managing an account, people often don't start to think about pushing it forward until it gets to repitch stage. You should be constantly moving that customer forward. Yeah.
So that's music to my ears, Steve. Yeah, that's music to my ears. And this is why, not to begrudge the performance of account managers or customer success people. They're all great people, yes, but they're incentivized often to simply achieve the KPI. And that's why I think it's important to have the business developers. Going back to tactic number 2, depending how the team is structured and what the processes are, for the BD leaders that are listening to this conversation with Steve, folks, you have to have BD continually involved, swing through the ball. Because the business developers should be, if they're trained by Steve, to have those reach goals in each of those conversations with your existing clients to help move the needle beyond just the basic KPIs and accelerate the process of getting to growth phase with your customers as quickly as possible. Steve, this is fascinating. Let me summarize the top 3 tactics or takeaways, and please jump in if I missed anything. Okay. Tactic number 1 is mindset. Approach each engagement from a position of value. We're not here to sell, we're here to save and deliver value to our prospects and help them succeed and survive in their industry. The second tactic is know what the process is. Understand what everybody does on the team, understand your responsibilities, what your authorities are, and understand the who, what, when, where, why, and how of the entire process. And then the third tactic is go in with each engagement focused on 3 primary objectives. The baseline KPI of what should I typically expect to come out of this conversation? The backup situation of, okay, at a minimum, what should I be able to come out of this conversation with? And then finally, that reach objective that you may feel a little uncomfortable asking the customer something, but when you do, when you reach, it opens up an entirely new conversation, and it could open an entirely new book of business. And if you want to learn about growing your business, then grab Steve Radford's book. It's How to Sell, everything you need to think, know, and do to have greater sales conversations. Again, folks, it's available on Amazon. Grab yourself a copy and reach out to Steve. Steve, how can folks connect, follow your work?
Best place to reach me is on LinkedIn. I love to have conversations with salespeople, business development people, SDRs, BDRs, whatever your role. Yeah, reach out, connect. Yeah, that's the best place to find me.
Okay, folks, you heard it. If you want to connect and converse with Steve Radford, feel free to do so. He's very accessible. And Steve, I've had a wonderful conversation with you today. Thank you so much for everything you do for the business development profession. We really appreciate it. And we'd love to have you back again when you write your next book.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you for listening to the Business Development Podcast. Join our free community of corporate partners and business development professionals advancing the art, science, and ethics of the business development profession at gbdassociation.org.